Have you ever thought about how something as enormous as a 400,000-ton oil tanker actually slows down and comes to a stop? The surprising truth is, it doesn't have brakes in the way a car does. There are no brake pads, no discs, and no surface that can grab the water like rubber grips a road. Instead, a ship relies entirely on physics and careful planning. When a fully loaded supertanker is cruising at about 15 knots, the process of stopping begins long before it reaches port. In many cases, the engines are reduced or even shut down roughly 20 to 25 kilometers out. From that point on, the ship doesn't actively drive forward anymore, it simply glides, carried by its massive momentum through the ocean. And this is where things get dramatic. Even after the engines are cut, the vessel doesn't stop quickly. It can continue moving forward for miles, sometimes taking more than 20 minutes to fully settle. In emergency situations, a full stop can stretch over several miles because there is nothing in the ocean strong enough to instantly absorb that energy. To understand why, you have to think in terms of energy, not just motion. A ship of this size carries an enormous amount of kinetic energy when it's moving. With hundreds of thousands of tons in motion, even at what seems like a slow speed, the total energy involved is massive. In physics terms, this energy cannot just disappear, it has to be gradually transferred into the surrounding water through drag and resistance over time. Now, the only real braking system a ship has is its propulsion system working in reverse. When a captain orders a full reverse maneuver, the engine room doesn't simply flip a switch. It's a carefully controlled sequence. First, fuel flow is reduced. Then the engine speed is slowly brought down. Engineers use compressed air to help slow and control the massive crankshaft. Only after the engine reaches a safe low speed can it be reversed. At that point, the propeller begins pushing water forward instead of backward. This creates a resisting force that helps slow the ship down. But here's where the real challenge begins. Ship propellers are actually built to be extremely efficient in one direction only, forward. When they're forced into reverse, they lose a significant amount of performance, often delivering only around 60 to 70% of their normal thrust. So right away, the ship's main slowing mechanism is already operating at a disadvantage. And even then, the surrounding water doesn't behave like solid ground. It doesn't grip the hull in any meaningful way. In fact, compared to something like a car tire on asphalt, the resistance is almost nothing. Engineers describe this difference using drag and friction concepts, and in water, those values are extremely small in comparison to land. To make it even more interesting, the resistance a ship experiences doesn't stay constant. It follows a key physics rule: drag increases with speed, specifically with the square of velocity. That means when the ship is moving fast, the water pushes back strongly. But as the ship slows down, the resistance rapidly drops off. This creates a strange effect: the slower the ship gets, the less the water helps stop it. That's why the final few knots are always the hardest part. It feels like the ship is coasting forever near the end, even though it's still being slowed down. The system that was helping slow it earlier suddenly becomes much weaker right when you expect it to finish the job. And reversing a giant marine engine isn't like shifting a car into reverse. These engines are massive, slow-moving machines designed for stability, not quick changes. If engineers tried to flip the direction while the system was still spinning too fast, it could trigger something called cavitation, where sudden pressure drops around the propeller create collapsing vapor bubbles that can violently damage the metal blades over time. Even worse, the sudden mechanical stress could travel through the drivetrain and strain the crankshaft itself, the huge forged steel spine that connects the engine's power to the propeller. If a drive shaft were to fail at sea, the consequences would be severe. A ship of this size would effectively lose both propulsion and steering, leaving it vulnerable in open water with no practical way to control its movement. That's why every step in slowing and reversing the engine is designed to protect the machinery, not rush the process. Large marine diesel engines cannot be forced to change direction instantly. They are brought down in stages, and certain systems, like compressed air used for braking and reversing, can only be applied once the engine speed drops below a safe threshold, typically around 40% of maximum RPM. This controlled cooldown means that even during a reversal, the ship is still carrying most of its forward motion. For several minutes, there is no meaningful deceleration from the engine itself, only natural resistance from the water. So if neither the engine nor the ocean can stop it quickly, what actually brings a supertanker to rest? The answer is that it isn't a single mechanism, it's an entire carefully timed operation. Long before the ship reaches port, the stopping process has already begun. Roughly 50 miles out, the captain starts gradually reducing engine power. This slow reduction is essential because it allows the massive vessel to shed momentum safely over a long distance instead of trying to stop suddenly. As the ship gets closer, control begins to shift. A specialized navigator known as a harbor pilot boards the vessel around 10 to 12 nautical miles from the port entrance. From that moment, the pilot takes over guidance because they have detailed knowledge of local currents, depth changes, and harbor traffic. By the time the ship enters the harbor, its speed has usually been reduced to just 2 to 3 knots, slow enough that it feels almost like a gentle crawl compared to its open sea speed. But even at that point, the ship still cannot truly maneuver on its own. The rudder becomes far less effective because it depends on fast-moving water to generate turning force, and at low speeds that flow is too weak. That's where tugboats take over. These smaller but extremely powerful vessels meet the tanker outside the harbor and connect heavy towing lines. From there, they begin carefully pushing, pulling, and rotating the giant ship into position. Every movement is controlled with precision because even a small error at this scale can have serious consequences. The final docking is entirely managed by these tugboats. The supertanker's own engines play only a minor role by this point. And the entire arrival can take several hours, not because the process is slow for no reason, but because it has to be. Controlling hundreds of thousands of tons of moving mass requires patience, coordination, and respect for physics. In the end, a supertanker doesn't simply stop in the way smaller vehicles do. It is guided down, step by step, until its enormous momentum is finally brought under control by time, distance, and human planning working together. On some very large crude carriers, or VLCCs, engineers once experimented with something almost unbelievable, a dedicated crash-stop control on the bridge. In theory, pressing it would trigger everything at once, fuel would be cut to both engines, mechanical braking systems would engage on the propeller shafts, the rudders would swing outward to maximum resistance, and even the anchors would begin dropping into the sea. It was designed as an extreme emergency system, something meant for worst-case scenarios where immediate stopping might be necessary. But in practice, crews quickly realized a hard truth about physics at this scale. Many of these ships simply disabled or disconnected the system. The concern wasn't that the idea was wrong, it was that the forces involved were too extreme. At full speed, a vessel carrying hundreds of thousands of tons of mass cannot suddenly be forced to stop without consequences. The stress on the propulsion shafts, rudders, and anchor systems would be enormous. Instead of stopping safely, the ship could risk serious structural damage. In other words, the system existed because engineers could imagine it, but experience at sea made crews respect what rail momentum actually means. And that brings us to the bigger picture. When you see a supertanker moving across the horizon, it may look slow, calm, almost effortless. But what you're really watching is the end result of a process that began long before it ever came into view. That ship started slowing down far out at sea, sometimes an hour or more before reaching the port approach. Its captain didn't wait until the last moment. Every adjustment was planned in advance, step by step, long before land was even visible. Because a ship like this doesn't stop in a sudden way. It is gradually guided down from speed, carefully managed across miles of ocean, until its massive momentum is finally brought under control. In the end, a supertanker doesn't truly break the way machines on land do. It slows down the only way something this massive can, through patience, distance, and precise coordination with time itself.